Hey guys, welcome to the live stream. Wait for a few more people to get in here. So who's in here so far? I see two people, one person, two people. Hey Jack, welcome to the live stream. Dang, that was a big jump. Eight people all of a sudden. That's pretty cool. So as you can see, guys, got a little bit of a spoiler alert over here. It's my motor. It's not done, obviously. It's all disconnected, but it's painted, which is looking real good, I think. What do you guys think? You like that blue? Welcome. So who wants to kick us off? Who wants to ask the first question? Jack, what size is the engine? Is it a 1275? So originally it was a 1275. It was bored over 1293 before I got it. So since owning it, it's always been a 1293 for me. And I've done some work with it. It's been out of the car a few times, but 1275 original. Jack, do you have a Classic Mini? Hey, Elias from Greece. Hey, Paul. Thanks for joining, Paul. Show you guys this motor a little bit more. So check that out. It came out pretty damn well. It's actually a lot glossier than I kind of wanted it. And the blue's a little darker than what I was expecting. Interesting, my gimbal's making some noise. Sorry about that, y'all. But I think, I mean, I don't, there's not a doubt in my mind. I think this is going to last a really, really long time. But I don't know. We'll see. The question I just saw there from Michael King, at what point does boring out an engine become a problem? Once you get into like 1380 makes the sidewalls really thin. So let me take this head off and I can kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Set that down. Oh, there's a long question. So, Michael, if you look at this cylinder here, so as you bore the cylinders, as you get these larger and larger, you make the sidewall right here much skinnier. As you can see, the one in between the two and between the number 2 and number 3 cylinders, that's the thinnest already. So if you start boring, you get a really thin sidewall. So you then lead to a greater risk of something like catastrophic happening, like throwing a rod or like breaking the sidewall, cracking the block of some sort. Bait It Sled says, hey dude, just wanted to ask a quick question. I did a cheeky launch the other day, and as soon as I shifted into second, the car started stuttering a lot and continued all the way to fourth. Any ideas? So what exactly do you mean by stuttering? Is it like, does it feel like it's losing power? Give me a little bit more detail here. Let's set this thing back up here. Sorry, folks. I mean to make you dizzy there. All right, RPM dropping a lot and almost shutting off. Let's see. I don't know that there's anything specific from shifting that would cause that. It might have just knocked something loose. I mean, are you sure that, has it been doing this before? Have you driven the car a lot recently? And has it had the same problem? Lewis Abbott says that it might be timing. It's possible, although I feel like you'd probably see the timing issues prior to that happening. You have been using it as a daily, but no issues before this. So what I'd be curious about, do you have dual carburetors? Are they HS2s, HS4s? Do you have a single carb? I ask because I've seen this behavior on my car, specifically when the float bowls got kind of gummed up and they weren't delivering fuel the right way. So that'd probably be the first thing I'd check to make sure that you're getting fuel and to make sure that the carburetors are getting fuel. If they aren't, then you might move back farther to the fuel pump, whether you have the mechanical one that sits on the back side of your engine block, or you have an electric one that sits under the fuel tank in the back or in the fuel tank. Could be kind of a faulty fuel pump. It's not pumping enough anymore. Those can all lead to kind of stuttery issues. And then past the fueling, I would check. So let me pull my carburetors out here. So in your carb, so this is an HS2 carb. This is the one that's on my car. This float right here comes up. As you press the gas, it allows more air to come in, and that lifts up, allowing more air to pass through the carburetor. If that if that's low on oil, you can have some issues with this actuating and bringing and allowing more air to come in and more fuel to come in. So that could also be something worth checking. The float system is pretty similar on just about every carb that the Mini uses, at least the original carbs. That float will need to lift up and lower, and it needs to be smooth. So get a little bit of resistance, and then it would go, you know, like I'm trying to think of an example, but can't think of one. And the bit about the float bowls is, so this is the float that sits in your float bowl, and right inside here, let's see if I can get a good shot of that. Right there, that little like silver piece is what gets pressed and allows fuel to fill up the float bowl. And sometimes those get gummed up and prevent the float bowl from allowing fuel to come in. So something else to check. Let's see if I got any other questions here. Doesn't look like it. Hey, Matthias, welcome, welcome. Hey, Dave, doing some major work on the Mini today. Rain is keeping me from painting it. Dave, I thought you sold your Mini. Did you get a new Mini or did you decide to keep it? Jack says, would you fit a turbo on your Mini? I probably would. I probably wouldn't do it on this Mini. One of the things about turbo motors and supercharged motors is you kind of want to start from this. You want to start from an empty block. You want to start from a base and build it up to be, you know, suited for the turbo. Specifically the pistons, because not all pistons can really handle that much boost. And then connecting rods, then move on to the crank. I mean, really everything. You just want to kind of spec it to the turbo. Realistically, probably could get away without doing that, but But if I was going to do it, it would be a new motor, a second motor, and then I don't even know if I put it in this Bad Wolf Mini. I'd probably put it in another one. Brendan says, "Hey mate, what's your best take on the best? What's your take on the best method to get the shims right in the upper and lower ball joints?" So, lucky for you, mine are out right now. Okay, so I just got done painting these, and I did this part here, obviously, and as you can see here, this right here is the top of the ball joint. Keep in mind they're not greased yet, but as you can see, that's flops around. That's not good. This one is on the bottom, and it has a little bit of resistance, and realistically, that's what you're looking for right there. You want to be able to move it with your finger, not with a lot of force, but you want to be able to do it. And then once you grease it here, and then on the top up here, if they're still, you know, a little tight, but not like super loose like that one, then you're in good shape. So it's not, for me, this is what's always worked. I'm sure there's an exact spec to this, but I don't know it. And this is, like I said, this has always worked for me. And it's never steered me wrong. Let's see here. Dave says, getting ready to sell it. Oh, okay, I see. Well, I still don't think you should sell the Mini because they're awesome, but I understand. Yeah, it's been kind of damp here recently, so you haven't been able to get a lot of paint work done, I'm sure. Kevin, hello, welcome to the live stream. Andrew Price says, I like the colors. Thank you. I think that it's gonna look pretty good. It's definitely darker than my car, but I think the blue with the blue is gonna look okay. Dave said, even the books say thumb pressure is right for the ball joints. Oh, well, there you go. Thanks, Dave. So today I've got like pretty much all the parts in my car taken apart. So if you have like really specific questions about the engine or the gearbox, which is sitting right over here, or really any suspension parts, today's the day to ask it, because I can definitely show you illustrations effectively of all of the stuff. Brendan says, found that the lower joint gets super tight once the spring is put in. Once the spring is put in. Oh, I see. The spring inside the ball joint, you mean? Yeah, so if that's the case, take one of the shims out. I think mine are totally tight right now. Maybe. Let's see. Okay, that's definitely tight. Well, unless the one is tight, that's tight. Damn it me, why did I tighten that? Well, there's a shim that goes in right here, in between this and the washer here. Just take one of them out, if there are any in there. If there aren't any in there, wait, you said it got tight when the spring goes in. Add shims. Got that mixed up. Add some shims. Eric Tell says, hi Cole, I'm currently trying to purchase my first Mini. My two options now are a 69 or a 71. I really hope it works out. I hope it works out for you too. Anything you want to tell us about the 69 or 71? Are they both, what size motors are they, you know, what, tell us about them. Kevin says, just in my garage working on my Mini rally car. Yeah, so you're working on it in there right now? I honestly could spend my whole day out here. I always have something that I can find to do. I just never want to go inside. Baytate Slab says, I'm not sure if I'm saying your username right. Sorry if I'm not. Have you had any experience with the rubber donuts that are supposed to make the ride smoother? Rubber donuts? Are you talking about the rubber cones? So the Mini's suspension was originally rubber cones. There was some like wet systems that used hydraulic fluid, but those are more rare. Rubber cones are actually the standard suspension kind of replacement for the springs. Rather, not replacement. The springs are an upgrade or a change from what was stock, which was the rubber cones. Michael King says, hi, sorry, complete rookie. Is the shim on the car to begin with? Usually there are maybe 1 or 2 shims on there. Sometimes there's not. But the shim kits are really inexpensive. If you're in North America, you know, shameless plug for my sponsor, 7 Mini Parts, they actually carry shim kits. They're really inexpensive, and they're literally just small rings. So, give you an idea. So this is a differential shrimp. This is a differential shim. But conceptually it's the same thing. The one for the ball joints is just smaller, but it's just a super thin piece of metal, and they're all different thicknesses. And if you go to 7 Mini Parts website, they have kits that you can get that come with a whole bunch of different sizes, so you can kind of put some in, tighten it down, test it. If it's too tight, too loose, you know, take one shim out, put a shim in, until you get the right feel on those ball joints. Lewis Abbott says, what the rubber donuts on the dry suspension? I'm not really sure what that question means. Dave says, I replaced the rubber cones with the Mini-tastic springs, and the ride is fantastic now. I would agree with Dave. I have done a spring replacement on my car. If you've been following the channel for a little while, you've probably seen the video, but I did a whole thing on that. I gave away a set too. But I have been super happy with my springs. I don't think I'd ever go back to cones. Eric says they're both $9.98. The 69 needs more work. It has some rust. The 71 seems all right, and I'll likely go with that, as the rust repairs seem daunting for my first Mini. So not to steer you away from the one that has, you know, less rust. If you're not sure you're going to be comfortable with that kind of work, I definitely understand that. When I bought my Mini, I didn't know anything about cars. I didn't know anything about cars, welding, rust repair. I was basically an idiot. I mean, like, I didn't know anything. And I just bought it. The whole floorboard had to be pulled out. I definitely got help from people, but you know, it's definitely doable if one is a little bit nicer, a little bit rare, or something like that. You know, don't always be too afraid of the rust. Lewis says, surprisingly, they're quite comfortable with the potholes are bad where I live. So yeah, so if you've got the rubber cones, don't get me wrong, rubber cones are actually pretty nice. They're comfortable. They just deteriorate faster than springs. Springs are metal. They last longer. I mean, the kind of short of it is that they are just a little bit, you know, more robust. Dave says all minis rust. That's definitely true. Michael King, one more question. Why add the shim to the ball joint? Let me get one of these apart real quick. Give me 2 seconds and I can show you. Tighten this so much, you guys. Really want to show you this. Well, all right. So I'm just gonna hold this up again. So this right here is your lock washer, and that gets hammered up to keep this from spinning when it's on the car and, you know, in operation. But this whole piece right here comes off, and in between this nut and that washer, the shim is used to create just, oops, sorry, there we go. The shim is used to create just the right amount of resistance on this pivot joint right up here. So this one, too loose. This one, thumb tight, which is what you want. Does that answer the question? All right. Thais says a little bit softer cones are red spots. They have better compressing. I've not heard of those, but if you want to post a link in here, share that. check it out after the live stream. Eric says, I'm sure I would work it out eventually. I'm more worried about the financial side of it. Totally understandable. I might go with the 69. Also, it comes down to the sellers, really. I've had a lot of bad luck with them. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, there's some bad apples here in North Carolina as well that we've had to deal with. So I definitely understand bad sellers. Bastion says, do you think it's a good idea to use the Classic Mini as a daily to make 100 kilometers per day? 100 kilometers was what, like 80 miles, I guess? It's a lot of driving. I don't think that, I mean, so I'll say this. I daily my Mini. Oh Lord, this chair. I daily my Mini, but I do not drive 80 miles a day or 100 kilometers a day. If I did daily it like that, there's two things that you kind of want to keep in mind. One, the car is not as comfortable as a new car is. I mean, it'll make you tired. Longer drives like that, especially if they're on the highway, will make you tired. It just takes more energy. No power steering, shifting a lot. It's loud, but not to say, I mean, obviously I love my Mini. I daily my Mini. The second thing is if you daily it, you really, really need to be on it with repairs. So like setting up a kind of repair schedule and making sure you change your oil every 3,000 miles, check the suspension, grease the joints, really get in the routine of doing this car work because it's something that you're gonna have to do if you're driving it that much. I mean, just kind of the reality of it. Matthias says you can find those red spot cones on mini spares, and it's C-STR687. You guys can see that. So here in the chat. Let's see here. Bring on the questions, guys. I'm really enjoying this. I've got so many parts out here, it's like the perfect time for me to show you some of this stuff. Bastion says, thanks, very good videos. Thanks very much. That's very kind words. Michael says, I'm looking at buying a 93. I previously owned a 76. Okay, cool. So the 93, I guess, is that, it's like right on the cusp of when they switch from carb to SPI, I think. Is that one the one you're looking at, an SPI or an MPI? I don't know if they did MPI that early. Caleb says, just took my 1275 out. Car's only on 65,000. Anything that would be worth changing. Car runs pretty spot on. Is a 94 Rover, 35 anniversary. 65,000 miles, and the engine is out. I would probably check the timing system, just because you can. Check to make sure the chain's tight, make sure that looks good. Obviously check the clutch. That's definitely worth checking. At that point, it should be a Verto clutch. So you can tell. I'm 99% sure it's going to be Verto. But just to double check, on your walk. So this is where your clutch is actuated from, and this is actually like this. A pre-Verto clutch has a really long arm like this, and it kind of actuates. The Verto clutches are smaller. They have the slave cylinder sitting like right here, and this arm is like half the size, maybe like a quarter of the size. So that's something worth checking. The Verto clutches are easier to replace, in my opinion, because they can all be put in kind of one, unit. Let's see, what else would I check? Check the compression on the cylinders, see if that's working good. Just inspect the whole thing for leaks, refresh gaskets, things around it. Really, you have an opportunity with the motor out to really go over it, and there's all sorts of places that this thing likes to leak. So, replacing it with gaskets that have a good gasket sealer is a really good idea. Let's see here. Paul says, are you going to do a video on the rebuild of the 1293? Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So I have a video just about the paint coming out. It's a shorter video. That's going to come out tonight or tomorrow morning sometime, assuming I get it edited today. And then I will be doing a full, like, top to bottom, like, assembly and rebuild of this motor. So don't you worry, lots of videos about that coming up. Let's see. Oh, Dave Pippin, that's a really good one. So he says timing chain, but one really good one is the oil pump. So on the side of your motor, this is the side that has your clutch on it normally. This hole right here is where your oil pump goes. Hold on. This is an oil pump, little unit. It's driven by the cam and it pulls oil through your motor. And that gets pressed on here. So check that. If I would just pull it off, get a gasket set for the whole motor. They're really inexpensive. Just get a nice set for it and check the gasket. Check to make sure it's sealed. I mean, when you pull it off, you're gonna have to replace the gasket. But then you'll wanna spin this, and if it's getting caught like really badly and it's not spinning smoothly, it's probably worth replacing, and it's cheap. So it's one of those things that it's really worth replacing, especially if you have the motor out, because if it fails, your motor's it's gonna be a lot more expensive than an oil pump. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? Michael King says, my question, if I use it for a daily drive for 8 months of the year daily, then how many hours can I expect to work on it per month? Admittedly, I don't understand your follow-up question about the 1993 Mini. I'm new with the cars and can only do brakes, rotors, oil, spark plugs. No problem, that's fine. So SPI is single point injection. Carburetor is just carbureted motor. And then multi-point is, or MPI is multi-point injection. So multiple points of fuel injection. So there's a shift that happened late in the later cars where they moved from having a carburetor, which is kind of an older version of fuel delivery systems, to a injection system, or sort of an injection system. So that was what I was asking. Regarding the amount of work you'll have to do to the car, I would not say that there is a fixed amount of time. Let me think about it here. So on average, driving my car, throughout the week, probably 3-4 times a week during the nicer months that are not miserably cold. I probably do, it's hard to say because I also make videos, but let's say I didn't do the videos, maybe like 2-3 hours every 2 weeks, maybe every month. It's a really hard question. I didn't expect that question to be that hard, actually. Caleb says, nice, thank you, great videos, really helped me out. I am very happy that it helped you. Thanks for the kind words. Shoes Gregory, hello, welcome to the live stream again. Good to see you again, or hear you, type, read you, whatever. Mini Stores, are you refitting your diaphragm clutch or fitting a Verto to Project Bad Wolf? I'm definitely keeping the pre-Verto. It's a stronger system. It's a little bit more work, but definitely keeping the diaphragm. I can show you guys that here in just a minute after I get through some of these other questions. Paul Jeffrey says, I use Victor Ryan's gasket sealer. It's brilliant stuff. It's called Ryan's Oil. Yes, so I've heard of that. I don't think we have it here in the US. If in the US, my favorite is this Permatex Ultra Black. I like it because it's black, and I like it because it's good. Not much else to it. But I would trust Paul Jeffries, for those of you on this live stream. He's the one who built my 4-pin diff that's going to be here soon, hopefully. Because of the holiday, UPS decided to take their time. But he is a smart dude. He's really helped me throughout this build for stuff that I don't know. Low GT says, my Mini has started leaking about a 1/4 cup of oil while parked for a week after the last oil change. Seems to be coming from the left-hand side to rear of the motor. Any suggestions of the seals to look at? Yes, I definitely do have a suggestion. So this right here is your differential output, and it sits on, let me just show you guys, this is probably going to be easier. 2 seconds. All right, so this gearbox, let's bring that down. And your differential sits here. It's kind of unimportant right now for what I'm showing you, but this cover, and it looks a little different on later models, but this cover right here goes on, sits, and there are 2 output shafts that run to your wheels and your drive shafts. And right here, this is really notorious on both sides for leaking. So that's what the output shaft looks like, or the output cover. And it goes on the side here. Those always leak, always. It's awful. They just, it's annoying, and they're almost always a source of leaks on these cars. So definitely check that. I would bet money that that's where it's leaking from. All right, looks like I got a few messages here. Let's pull up. Megadite, that's not the clutch side. This is definitely the clutch side, definitely. So your transfer case sits on the side, comes down, connects to the end of your crank on the main gear, transfers down to your clutch, and everything is down here. Low GT says, also, what is a good oil pressure? Mine idles at 85 to 90. That's way too high. Under load, it should be maybe hitting 80. Idle is like kind of sweet at 35 to 50, higher than that, and it's really hard on the oil system. You know, under load, it makes a little bit more sense. It needs more oil, but still 80, 90 is pretty high. Shoes Gregory says, I have an SPI model, but with the carburetor, but that's stock from the factory. So in your case, it's not an SPI model. It's a carbureted model. Shoes says, my question is, can I gain some power by changing the carburetor, or is this a really bad idea to do? It's not a bad idea. That's actually a really great source of more power. So if you have a single carburetor on your car right now, and I bet you do, and I would go out on a limb and say it's probably an HS4, you've already got a pretty big carburetor. It's already got a pretty high flow rate. So really, if you were going to upgrade from that, you can move to like an HIF 44 or 66. I always get these numbers mixed up. There's HIF carburetors, which is kind of a modernized version. Yeah, HIF 44. They're great. Single carb as well, but it's a lot of flow. The main thing that you want to consider is that, you know, even if you open up the carburetor to the maximum amount you can open it up to, you still are limited by how much flow your head has and how long your valves stay open, which is why you would change something like the camshaft or the rocker arms to one of the roller tipped rockers at a higher ratio. It allows the valves to stay open longer, let more air in, more fuel in, and then et cetera, better acceleration, boom, more power. Megadite, my bad, looks like the reversed image. Oh yeah, it's probably because I have my camera on my phone flipped, so it's like the selfie cam, and it always flips that, so. Michael King says, I probably should get back to work. Thanks for your time and excellent videos, which I will no doubt use a ton once I pick up the Mini. The Q&A is a nice platform to listen and learn. Thanks very much, Michael. Thanks for joining. If you have any other questions, there'll be more Q&As or post comments in the description below. Matthias says, Cole, the clutch is on the other side. It's on the left of the engine when you're standing in front. Yes. Yeah. Yep. So I know it's confusing because of the camera, but this is the front of the motor and this is the left side of the motor. So this is the clutch side. Triggered. You're triggering me, Matthias. I need you to dial it back. This is the safe zone. I cannot handle this right now. Let me move this gearbox back out of the way. All right, let's see. Did I miss any questions? Does not look like it. What else do you guys got for me? I've got so many things to say. I've got so many parts and stuff to show you. Any other problems with your cars that you need some help with right now or something like that? Paul says you need to shorten the oil pressure valve spring to lower the oil pressure. Yeah, that's actually a really great idea. So one thing that you can do, it's up here around here somewhere. One thing you can do is add an adjustable relief valve. And so it looks like this, and you have your adjustment knob here, your locking nut. This mounts into the block right here. I always get this mixed up. So whoop, this is where your distributor goes. Right next to it, you have your relief valve. And so this screws in right here, and this actually allows you to actuate the pressure, the oil pressure. So if you have too much, you can, reduce that by bringing it out. And then if you want more oil pressure, you can bring it in. And then this is the little plunger that sits in the bottom that is actually, moving open to allow that oil pressure relief. So very good little upgrade. I'm very happy I did this. 7 Mini Parts sells these. I think they're about 50, 60 bucks. But it gives you that variability and that, kind of granular ability to change that stuff. So strongly recommend that. Shoes Gregory says, how much should I max invest for a cage? I love speed and I love to live. How much is your life worth to you? That would be my question. Personally, I put a cage in mine. It's just the rear. At some point, I would like it to come forward and down to the front. But I spent 300 bucks on that, and I would probably spend $600 or $700 on that easily. That seems like a fair price. Bates Lad says, just a quick kind of silly question. What speed would you comfortably cruise at on the highway? Because I live in a place with a lot of straight roads and I really don't like going over 50. The fastest I've ever been in the Mini is 85, and I will never go that fast again on the highway, that's for sure. Maybe on a track, but that was terrifying. The whole car was just like shaking, and that's probably because my wheels are out of balance. But regardless, I normally cruise at the highway speed, so like 65, 70, based on the highway that I'm on, and I'm good there. It does kind of depend on your, your final drive gear too, though. If you have a larger final drive gear, I always get this mixed up, so sorry if I have this wrong. But if you have a bigger final drive gear, it's easier to drive on the highway. If you've got a smaller one, it's harder. Pretty sure that's how that goes. Bastion says, what do you think about the 5th gear kit for the Classic Mini? I think it's pretty cool. They're really expensive, and for me, it's not totally worth that huge price tag to get a 5th gear. I'm pretty satisfied with the 4 gear system, but I could see the improvement of having kind of an overdrive gear, which would be good for cruising, especially on the highway, like my last question. Make it a little bit more comfortable. I think, if I remember correctly, they recently released a gearbox that's not straight cut for 5 gears, for a 5 gear system. Can't remember who makes it though. Yeah, can't remember that. But that one I'd probably consider over the straight gear more so. Let's see here. Shoes Gregory says, was it new? The roll cage, when I got it, was new. It was made by a group called Super Fast Minis. They make VTEC conversions here in in the United States. They're down in Georgia or South Carolina, so just down the street from us. They make some really, really cool cars. They brought the roll cage to an event, sold it in silent auction, and I won it for money, obviously, but I won that in that auction. Matthias says, we were going to London last weekend, about 500 miles each, over 60, 70 miles per hour. It was too noisy and shaking. Yeah, so there are some ways you can fix that. Two things that pop up to mind, first is your final drive gear. This is not an easy change, though. Keep in mind this really, you need the engine out to do something like this. But it's the final drive gear right here. This is the crown wheel, and then there's a pinion gear that's smaller that sits right here. And this is what actually delivers the power to your drive shafts, your wheels. I mean, all of the power coming from the motor goes through this gear and into your drive shafts. And there are variable sizes. So the one that I found is like the perfect sweet spot for me is a 2.95 ratio. But there are tons of other ratios. There are some that are much bigger than that. I think there's a 275, which would be pretty good on the highway. And not a lot of low end torque, I don't think, but it would be pretty solid. And then balancing your wheels, checking your alignment, things like that, that actually helps a lot with the vibrations. She says, I did already a bit more than 90, but not sure to do. Thanks everyone, so nice to have all these knowledgeable Mini enthusiasts in one place. Yeah, that's the best part about these comment sections, because I'm not always right, and there are a lot of people in here who can help make sure that fact check the bullshit I say. The 5-speed was on Mini Spares. I believe it was really expensive, and it was like 1,800 British pounds. Yeah, that sounds about right in terms of the pricing that I've seen. Most of the ones here in the US for like $5,000, which is way more than 1,800 pounds. But what are you gonna do? Standrew says, 5 gears is not that good because there's not enough space. I know a guy who was towing a Caravan Mini and went broke. He is back in 4-speed gears. That's good info. Dave Pippin says the 5-speed box is not recommended by AC Daughter Andy Davies, MLM Motorsport in Kent, because I asked a few years ago about it. So there you go. There's some race brains right there who gave some feedback and don't recommend the 5-speed box. So some kind of different perspectives there. So my perspective, keep in mind, is one of never having driven a 5-speed box. So it's all kind of speculative on my part. If you've had an opportunity to drive one, maybe share your opinion. Sahil says, I saw a video on a guy doing an engine swap with a Honda VTEC B16B. Yeah, the VTECs are actually a pretty common engine swap. I've got a friend here in North Carolina who's doing a D-series swap. And then there's plenty of other people some people have done K-series, B. They've done some all-wheel drive swaps. There's some really crazy engine swaps they've done with the VTEC. Somehow they just stuff all that engine in there. Eric Till says, so what would you guys recommend for the first few mods to a recently acquired Mini? I was thinking of doing suspension, tires, and the solid mounts for the subframe. So I'll let other people say what they recommend too, but I would probably probably not go to the solid mounts immediately. You generate a lot more vibration in the car with those solid mounts. So if you don't mind that, then you're going to get a lot better throttle response and things like that. It's going to just feel more solid. But the first thing I would do with a new Mini is, before doing any mods, before changing it, anything like that, once over it, check all of the seals, check the suspension, you know, get everything in really good shape, and then in doing that, you're gonna see things that are broken and then maybe worth upgrading. If the cones have never been replaced, the rubber cones, that's something that is definitely worth replacing. It's going to make things a lot more comfortable. But other than that, it's important to just give it a once over, because you never know what the last owner did. I mean, they could say they did all the necessary repairs, but what's their version of all the repairs? Dave says, I drove one once. It was actually really nice with the 5th gear, but the owner then said he expected it to fail any day now. Wow, okay. And then also, Dave says, solid mounts send a lot of vibration to the rest of the car, not recommended. Yep, Paul, same thing. So, you know, it depends on what the car is going to be used for. Megadite says, solid mounts are really for track cars. Road cars don't merit it. Just too noisy. Stick to good quality rubber and poly. 100% agree with that. Specifically, I would recommend poly, something that's going to last. Bastion says, how do you change a steering rack on a 97 MPI Mini? There isn't any video of that on YouTube. There's a reason there's not any video of that on YouTube, because it's a royal pain in the ass. Let me bring you out to the car, and I can give you a little illustration, hopefully. So, this is the front side of the car. Let's see if I can get a little bit more light in there. And this right here is your steering rack. And that goes up underneath the subframe on the back there. So the main thing is that you actually have to lower the subframe a little bit to allow that to pass out. And what that also means is that the car's, it's holding the motor and everything up as well. So, whoop, there we go. This right here, steering rack, it's all one piece, comes across to the other side. You got to take your steering wheel off. You got to take your steering column out. It's a pretty big job. I actually tried to create a video on it with a friends, and this is right when I started the channel. And it was so difficult to get that done. It's not impossible, don't get me wrong. But we ended up spending so much time just trying to get the rack out and kind of behind the subframe. It was too difficult to film. Now, I might reapproach that video in the future, but that's kind of the gist. You got to lower the subframe enough to where the steering rack can slide out. So it's one of those things that's much easier to do with the subframe completely out. I will put it that way. What bushings, Baitslad says, what bushings do you use on the engine steadies? I've got my engine steady around here somewhere. Hang on. Okay, so the engine steady I have is adjustable, whoops, and the bushings that I use on it are actually all poly black, like not rubber, but like a rubber replacement for poly, but that's pretty much it. Nothing fancy. Lewis says, I've got rubber ones, but poly bushings are a lot better. Yep, there you go. Another answer for poly. One of the reasons poly's so good is that it's durable and it lasts a long time. It doesn't degrade in the same way that rubber does. And then there's also different hardnesses, not thicknesses, densities. I don't know. I can't think of the right word. There are varying types of poly, so you can get ones that are really soft that are made for road cars, and then really, really hard ones that are made for track cars. So, you can always find something that works best for you. Dave says, the lower engine steady bracket sometimes breaks off at the subframe. Keep an eye on it. Yes, that's true. That's a, oh, let's see here. Did you ask about the lower steady? No. Okay, thought I missed that. So there are two steadies, especially if you have a rod change gearbox, they have lower steadies that are built in by the factory. And the factory ones, like Dave said, break. They break a lot. They like almost always break. And there are replacement versions that are stronger steel that use basically the same dog bone mount that's used on the top, on the bottom. And you can mount them both on the bottom sides of the rear of the gearbox. So check those. Replace them with poly if you find them, and I just go ahead and replace probably the whole bracket. Eric tells us, I'm off now. Have a good day, everyone. First time here today. I'll definitely try to show up again. This is great. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the kind words. It's good to have you here. Megadite says, I treat steady bushes as a service part and change them often. They are less than $5 and engines rock on a Mini just provokes other mountings to fail. Agreed. One of the things I kept trying to figure out why my drive shaft was failing, and it was simply the bottom engine mount. The rubber had failed, and I just didn't see it. It looked like it was good. So that's a perfect example. If your steadies start to fail, other stuff starts to fail. Just because things aren't supposed to move all over the place. Dave says, are you boring the engine out past 1275? I'm assuming that's a question for me on this motor. This one is already a 1293, so it's just going to stay at 1293. Going to go back in the engine. I am getting a new cam. It's a mini spares cam, the Evo 001. So I had a mild road cam in there before. Now I'm putting a fast road cam in there. 1, 2, 3 ignition. That should be pretty cool. A few little upgrades, and I think all of it put together will really make a nice little jump in power. Fingers crossed. Won't know it till it's together, I suppose. Make sure I didn't miss any questions. Shoes Gregory says, can I do something wrong by adjusting carb? Too much fuel or air, too less of it? So yeah, I mean, adjusting the carburetors is always going to adjust that fuel. And I mean, if you have too much, the car's just going to run really rich. It's not really going to run that great. If you have too little, it'll be too lean. And then you can cause overheating issues, things of that nature. Most of the HS carburetors, if you've got one that has like a float bowl on the side like this HS2, HS4 is basically this, but bigger. And this nut right here is what's used to adjust the fueling. And if you pull that out, let's see here, if you go anti-clockwise makes it leaner from the top. So if you're looking at it from the top as it sits on the car and you go anti-clockwise, I think it makes it leaner. And then if you go clockwise, it makes it richer. So the kind of sweet spot for that fueling, and I would recommend getting, if you have a rolling road available to you or like a dyno, you can dyno tune it, that's the best, that's kind of the best case scenario. If you don't, the way you need to try and figure out, what am I looking for here? Spark plugs. The way way you need to figure that out is by looking at your spark plugs and determining, so you've changed the fueling a little bit, feel how it drives, keep an eye on your temperature, and then pull your spark plugs out and take a look at them. See if any of mine are a good example. Let's see. So this one right here, it's really hard to see in this video, but that one was running really lean. So my carburetors were out of sync. I was having some problem with them. But white spark plugs mean that it runs really lean. It's not running at the optimal temperature. It's not running at the optimal fueling. If something's black, if you're seeing black on the spark plugs, it means it's too rich. What you kind of want to look for is, like, imagine a rotisserie chicken or like a turkey on Thanksgiving or something like that, just coming out of the oven, like a sweet brown. Something kind of close to that is your ideal on the fueling if you don't have an air-fuel ratio meter. If you have an air-fuel meter, that was a lot of noise, sorry. If you have an air-fuel meter, that's going to help you a lot, and you want to be looking for like a 12.7 ratio, but that's only if you have that meter. That'll tell you, that's like the sweet spot for road driving. Dave says, are you staying with the dual HS2s or any others? So for the time being, I'm going to put the HS2s back on. I've got a little rebuild kit for them. I'm going to put those back on and see how everything rolls with the HS2s. And then if I am like really not satisfied with the power, I might upgrade to HS4s, a single HIF. I don't know yet. Remains to be seen, to be determined. Megadite says, how common are minis in the US? I'm in France and drive a after 8. I'm not really sure what an after 8 is, but minis in the US are not super common. They were only sold for a short time in the 60s and then had some safety issues that didn't meet the standards of North America or the US, I forget. So they kind of stopped selling them here. They didn't sell very well either. So they're not a lot. They're not a lot. Mine came from Canada. Most of the ones I've seen are imports. I do see American minis every once in a while, you know, the 60s years, but they're getting rarer, so. Shoes Gregory says 2 carbs or a single carb. On my car, I've got dual carbs, dual HS2s, so both of the carbs are sitting over here. And they link up all their linkages and everything, so really the main thing is you gotta match up the fueling on those. If you have a single carb, it's a little bit easier to tune because you only have one that you have to get the fueling right on. Matthias says, bye all, was a nice episode, really appreciate this. Thanks, Matthias. Have a good evening, afternoon, day, whatever it is, wherever you are, because I forget. So I have a question for you guys. What do you think about this crinkle black on this blue? Does it look good, or would you go with the polished aluminum on the blue motor? Megadite says, lol, after 8 is just a limited mint model mini. Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know. I've never heard of that one before. Dave says, got to get back out to the garage. Both the Mini and the Jeep are calling me. Thanks, Cole, and all good chat. Have a good one, Dave. I'll talk to you later, I'm sure. Oh, good. Like the valve cover? Black, black? Okay, cool. I am liking what people are saying because I don't want to buy another one. Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Awesome. And the chrome T-bars look good too. Lewis Abbott says the polished one looks better, but the black looks stealth. So you would go with polished, but the black still looks good is what I'm hearing. I do have some T-bars that are blue. I don't know if that... I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm a fan with that. What do you think? I don't think the blue's right for that one. Blue T-bars? All right, let me take these off. We'll take a look at them real quick. Oh, those gaskets are not coming off anytime soon. So there's blue. Blue, chrome. Blue, chrome. Shoes says the black one looks more aggressive and powerful. Yeah, man, it adds like 4 or 5 horsepower for sure. Sorry, Paul, it looks like most people are saying chrome. I'm gonna sit on it. I'm gonna sleep on it for a little while. We'll see. I might end up with the blue still. We shall see. Whoa. Megdite says they were only sold in France, Spain, and Portugal. After Eight is made of is a make of chocolate. I like the black, but for me, 1275 needs to be red. But hey, it's your car. Yeah, one of each. Paul, get out of here. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of mixed emotions about the block and the color of the block and the head. I know a lot of people want it to be the traditional colors of red or like that MG green, that like British racing green. They're really nice colors, but it didn't feel right to have that color in my blue Mini. I kind of like everything to jive really well. I guess red is not that bad considering like, red and blue kind of go together on something. I can't quite figure out. I guess we'll never know what red and blue look good on together. But I don't know. I think it turned out all right. But yeah, what other questions do you guys have for me? It's been about an hour, so I'll probably be wrapping up here pretty soon. What's the question here? Shoes Gregory says, do you have a good color combination for me? Mine gets resprayed in a few months, but I can't decide on which color. What color is your car? That's the first question I have. Or are you talking about respraying the motor, or are you talking about respraying your car? Okay, so the car is gray. Black motor would be kind of cool. But honestly, okay, so you're thinking about respraying the car. I really like gray cars. Paul Jeffries, I don't know if you're part of the Mad Old Minis Club, or I forget what it's called. I think it's Mad Old Minis. He recently posted some pictures of his gray and black Mini in there, and oh god, it looks so good. It's so good. Like I think that it might be one of my favorite color cars. I like the British Racing Green. I don't think you should go with red. Not because I don't like red. I really, really like red cars, but there's a lot of red Minis out there, and some variety is pretty cool. So like you could do this. Light gray on the outside, black roof, black wheel arches. I'm stealing this all completely from Paul's car. And then inside, maybe like a brown leather, like dark brown leather interior. Oh god, that would look so good. That's probably what I'd do. Paul says, have you checked the idler gear clearance while the gearbox is off? The idler gear, I have, as far as like the size of the idler gear and the transfer case. If that's your question, then it's good, because I'm keeping the walk and transfer case and gearbox all together from the rod change box, so all those should match up pretty good. As far as idler gear, like end float, I haven't checked any of that stuff yet. I haven't moved into that in the engine build. I'm probably going to reassemble this, figure out how the hell to degree a cam, and then after that I'll move into the gearbox and getting all this stuff mounted up and clearanced and all that stuff. Yeah. Bates says, I sprayed mine in a color code used on the BMW Minis, olive green color code C15, black Royf black wheel arches, a tan interior with wood dash and steering wheel. Turned out pretty damn nice. There you go. There's some color combinations. Megadite says, being your first gearbox, did you find it difficult to get your head around? Yes. Like, in short, definitely was difficult for me to understand at first. But what I actually found to be the easiest way to understand it, because I looked at it for ages, just like moving stuff around and like poking at it and stuff. And really, what made me understand it the most was just taking it apart. You know, starting slowly, taking it apart, setting the parts out, really understanding what everything does, and looking it up, lots of reading. I think the hardest part for me to get my head around with that gearbox, though, thinking about it, is the synchronizers and how all that stuff works. Feels like magic, but the whole gearbox felt like magic before that, so I got there. Are you thinking about doing a gearbox soon? All right, maybe I lost you, Megadite. But I think things are starting to wind down. Shoes Gregory says, I still have everything with wood inside, so I think the interior will not get brown too much, but the car could really get gray-black. There you go, man. Lewis Abbott says, do you know the common oil leaks? Do you know what the common oil leaks are on a Mini? I can tell you the common leaks that I have experienced on my Mini, and I'm assuming they're probably pretty common. One spot is the rear main seal. That one has leaked on me before. Let me show you that. So in your transfer case, you have this big opening, and your crank goes in right here, passes through, well actually passes this way. But this is your rear main seal. This is technically the rear of your motor where the clutch sits. This sits like so on your motor. Let me put that down there. There we go. Sits like that. And that is a common place for leakage. Then you can actually tell if you're leaking. They've got a small hole in the bottom that normally has a cotter pin in it. And if it has oil on it, you know that you're probably leaking oil out your rear main seal. Then the output shafts to your drive shafts is a really common place. I mentioned that a little bit earlier in this video. It's the spot that comes right off the back of your transmission where the drive shafts go into the actual motor. Replacing those is a messy job. You got to drain the oil first. But once you do that, you can get in there, reapply some silicone sealant, and really get those sealed. Valve covers seem to leak a lot. The gasket around the valve cover here. So that's a good one. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the common places that I've seen mine leak a lot. You know, once I got some really good seals on there, it didn't happen too much. I've changed gods. I'm assuming that is boxes. Yep, boxes. In the past, but for good used ones, but never had the balls to rebuild one. It really wasn't that bad. Once you got in there, Paul Jeffries says Mini Mania has good YouTube videos on how to dial the camshaft in. And I would agree, they have some good information. There's one video I watched recently where a guy and his kid were doing it, and I actually found that to be the most helpful so far. His son was doing like the calculations, and then he was doing, you know, the majority of the degreen and everything. Mini Spare sells clutch oil seal tool. I've never had one leak since I've used that tool. Well, that's good to know. I've seen that tool, but I've been kind of on the fence about picking it up. It feels like, it seems like it's expensive. I mean, it's expensive for us here in the US, you know, for something that I really probably would only use once or twice. But the right tool for the job generally makes the job easier. So, Megadite says rod type gear change rod will always leak. So there is a new seal kit for those rod change boxes where it comes out the back of the differential. And from what I've heard, this is my first time, there's going to be a rod box going back on this. And from what I've heard, it's actually pretty good at keeping it from leaking there. So, you know, that's my anecdotal evidence there. Shoes Gregory says, can you do a compressor on a carb mini compressor? Like an AC compressor? Is that what you mean? Paul Jeffrey says, the half moon seal is a common point of oil leaks. I use the Mini Spares rigid half moon seal. Okay. Lewis says, cheers, thanks for the advice. Catch you later. Thanks for joining, Lewis. I will see you on the next one. Megadite says there's space to put 2 seals in. That helps too. 2 seals in the rod change box, I'm assuming. Is that what you mean? Shoes Gregory, no problem on the English. So supercharger for the carbureted motors. So I know, actually, Mighty Car Mods, they tried to do a supercharger on a carbureted Mini, I think. And they ended up getting really frustrated with it. He ultimately ended up going to a VTEC Mini after putting a hilarious amount of money into the supercharger one. You know, whatever. But I don't think, you know, I'm sure it can be done. I feel like I've seen pictures of it done, actually. I'm sure it's just kind of a little temperamental, and it's just a process. It'd probably be a lot of work. Oh, Megadite says it was a Japanese SPI. Oh, okay. I knew it was a Japanese Mini, but I couldn't remember if it was a Carver SPI. So, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but that 240 that they're doing with the Skyline motor, good lord. That has been keeping me going through my motor build, that's for sure. Totally different, whole nother level on that. But just incredible. But I think that is where I'm going to wrap up this live stream. I thank you so much for everybody who joined and participated. I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys got some information and helped you guys out too. But yeah, I will see you guys on the next episode, which should be dropping tonight. It's 12 o'clock here in the US, so you'll probably see that dropping tonight or tomorrow morning. And then on the next episode, maybe I'll start putting together the motor. Fingers crossed. But thanks again, guys. Till the next time, enjoy those minis. Motor on.